Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to have you here for what I really consider a fundamental masterclass. Today, we're diving into a visual, step-by-step explainer of qualitative research. Now, if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the sheer number of methodologies, theories, and approaches out there, honestly, don't worry. Think of this session as your personal methodological roadmap. We're going to break it all down so you can take those first steps into the field with absolute confidence, clarity, and a real sense of purpose.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be moving logically through the entire research process. First, reflective posture and fundamental questions. Second, choosing your research strategy. Third, preparing your data collection. Fourth, conducting interviews and visual observations. Fifth, rigorous analysis of collected data. And finally, number 6, ethics and respect for participants.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, reflective posture and fundamental questions. The key takeaway here? You have to know yourself before you head into the field.
You know, all qualitative research absolutely has to start with a bit of introspection. Before you can even begin to understand the social world of others, you have to understand your own philosophical assumptions. So let's do a quick reflective exercise. Grab a pen and jot down right now what your preconceived notions are about your topic. Ask yourself, are you an insider, deeply familiar with the group you're studying, or are you a total outsider? Your position, somewhere between strange and familiar, will literally dictate the methods you choose and which doors will open for you. Because, let's face it, your own history inevitably shapes how you view the world.
So where do we actually start? Well, a beautifully crafted research question acts like a doorway to the field. First, identify a problem. Often this comes right out of your personal biography, like Glaser and Strauss's famous study on end-of-life care, or just a practical everyday need. Second, formulate your questions. Are you looking to explore a brand new situation, describe a process, or explain a relationship? Finally, define your guiding question. Now, this isn't the exact question you'll ask in an interview. Rather, it's your North Star. It's the overarching question that will dictate your entire data collection strategy.
Moving on to Section 2, choosing your research strategy. We're going to map out the qualitative landscape here.
There are 4 main qualitative strategies you can choose from, and remember, the nature of your research question always dictates your tool. If you're focusing on an individual's life story, like a biographical study of Finnish language teachers, you'll go with narrative research. If you want to understand the universal, shared essence of a specific experience, like the process of grief, phenomenology is your go-to. If you're describing the shared behaviors of a culture-sharing group, like how a gang operates, that's ethnography. And finally, if you're analyzing a specific bounded system, like evaluating a school program, you're looking at a case study.
Let's clarify some nuances here, because it can get a little confusing for beginners. What's the real difference between the narrative approach and phenomenology? While narrative research hones in on the timeline and identity of just 1 or 2 individuals, it's a purely biographical deep dive. Phenomenology, on the other hand, steps away from the complete life story to focus on one specific experience, like insomnia or anger, that is shared by a diverse group of people. The whole goal is to capture the universal essence of that single experience.
It's equally crucial to distinguish phenomenology from ethnography. While phenomenology looks at a shared internal psychological experience, ethnography flips the script and looks at an external, observable system. Ethnographers literally immerse themselves in the daily lives of a group to document their shared culture, social networks, and language. So it's a shift from studying how individuals feel internally about an event to observing exactly how an entire community functions externally.
Now, if you decide to go with a case study, you absolutely have to draw some boundaries around it. Here is a super practical checklist for you. Without a clean starting and ending point, your research is just going to lose focus. You need to identify the specific case, define the physical location, establish the exact time frame of the study, and determine your intent. Is it an intrinsic case, meaning the case itself is totally unique and unusual, or is it instrumental, where you use a specific situation to understand a much broader social issue? Lock those boundaries down early.
All right, Section 3, preparing your data collection. Approaching the field takes serious rigor. As your professor, I highly recommend setting up a strict weekly schedule to separate your approach phase, your actual field collection, and your initial analysis phases so you don't get completely overwhelmed.
Stepping into the field requires meticulous planning. This decision tree is incredibly helpful for picking your interview method based on your research question. If you need a really broad overview of a brand new topic, go with an unstructured interview and just let the participant guide you. If you need strict comparability where every single answer has to be standardized, use a structured interview with a rigid grid. But
If you're like most qualitative researchers, you'll want the sweet spot, the semi-structured interview. This gives you a rigorous thematic framework, but still leaves you the flexibility to explore those fascinating tangents your participant might bring up.
Which brings us to Section 4, Conducting Interviews and Visual Observations. Now we're in the thick of it.
Conducting your very first research interview can definitely be intimidating, so treat these points as your golden advice cards. First and foremost, be an empathetic listener. You want to establish trust right from the get-go. Don't just dive straight into the heavy stuff. Start with factual, non-threatening questions to break the ice. Save those sensitive topics for later once you've actually built some rapport. Use gentle prompts if they lose their train of thought, and never forget that an interview is, at its core, a social interaction. Pay close attention to silences and nonverbal cues. If your participant seems uncomfortable, you must deeply respect their boundaries.
Now, if you're doing participant observations instead of interviews, your field notes are going to be your lifeline. Here's a simple 3-phase model to organize your notes like a funnel. Start with Phase 1, descriptive observation, where you're just getting a broad orientation to this new environment. As you learn more, move into Phase 2, focused observation, zooming in on the essential processes and problems related to your research. Finally, Phase 3 is selective observation. This is where you look for highly specific evidence to confirm the practices you've identified. It's a natural progression from the general to the very specific.
Transitioning now to Section 5, rigorous analysis of collected data. This is where we take all that theory and put it into practice.
Let's look at how to actually do this technically. First, you prepare your text files by transcribing your interviews. A quick tip for those semi-structured interviews, use dictation or auto-transcription software to save yourself hours of time. But always remember to manually note the timestamps of long silences or strong emotions. Next, you assign codes to text segments. Coding is basically just tagging a sentence with a specific concept. For example, if a participant talks about lying awake all night, you might create the code sleep disturbance. Then you zoom out and group these codes into broader clusters of meaning, or themes. These themes are what allow you to draw verifiable conclusions. It's a really meticulous process of sorting and structuring.
But how do you actually know if your analysis is solid? Well, the ultimate test is its internal validity, sometimes called truth value. Does your description make sense? Does it ring true to the people you actually studied? Because your goal isn't to prove a statistical frequency. Your goal is to paint an authentic, context-rich portrait of your subject. This internal validity is the bridge that proves your theoretical analysis faithfully reflects the real-world practice. Finally, we arrive at Section 6, Ethics and Respect for Participants. This is the moral compass of our work, and honestly, the most critical part of this entire explainer.
Always remember this defining quote. Research ethics can be defined as moral principles that guide researchers to conduct and report research without deception or intention to harm. In qualitative research, ethics isn't just some administrative hurdle or a box to tick for your university's review board. It is the fundamental, unwavering principle of respecting human dignity. You are literally diving into people's lives, their beliefs, their cultures. You become the keeper of their stories, and that comes with immense responsibility.
You need to weave these 4 pillars of ethical theory into every single phase of your research design. Non-maleficence, do no harm. Beneficence, strive to produce real positive benefits for the people you study. Autonomy, respect the participants' values and their right to make their own decisions. And justice, treat all people equally. These aren't just abstract concepts, guys. They dictate how you phrase your questions, how you observe, and even the tone of your final report.
From a practical standpoint, here are the steps you must follow. Before you even begin, assess any potential violations or risks. Gather your institutional review board approval. Obtain formal, informed consent, meaning your participants need to know exactly what the study is about and understand that their participation is 100% voluntary. And lastly, ensure their privacy. Ethical reflection doesn't stop when data collection ends. It extends into the meticulous, ongoing protection of your participants' data and anonymity.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As qualitative researchers, we transform a complex, living world into a series of representations, field notes, transcripts, reports. So ask yourself, what ethical responsibility do you hold for the story you ultimately choose to tell about your participants? Your research has the power to highlight the invisible and give a voice to the unheard. Go into the field with a reflective posture, a rigorous method, and an infallible moral compass. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope you feel absolutely ready and excited to explore the fascinating world of qualitative research.